The air tasted like metal and death. John pressed his face against the cracked screen, watching the numbers drop. Oxygen levels were falling again. He had maybe 3 hours before everyone in shelter 47 would start choking. His hands moved across the ancient control panel, trying to coax life from machines that should have died years ago. Dad, are we going to die today? Minyu asked from behind him. The boy was 7 years old and had never seen the sky. None of the children had. Earth's surface was a burning wasteland of storms and toxic clouds. June turned and forced a smile. Not today, little one. Dad's fixing it, but he was lying. The recycler was dying. Just like everything else on Earth, just like humanity itself. Outside the shelter, the world that had once held 8 billion people now barely supported 400 million. They lived like rats in underground holes, eating synthesized paste, breathing recycled air, and waiting for the end. The stellar radiation wave had come without warning 15 years ago, cooking the atmosphere and triggering a cascade of disasters that broke civilization in months. John had been a university student then. He remembered the panic, the riots, the desperate rush underground. He remembered his parents staying on the surface to help others get to safety. He never saw them again. Now he was a shelter engineer, which meant he knew 1,000 different ways everything was breaking and exactly how little he could do about it. The oxygen recycler groaned and shuddered. John slammed his fist against it. Sometimes that helped. Today it didn't. Shelter 47, this is Central Hub. The radio crackled to life. Report your status. June grabbed the transmitter. This is June. Recycler 3 is failing. I need replacement parts or we're finished. Negative. Shelter 47, no parts available. Do your best. Minyu tugged on his sleeve. Dad, what happens when we run out of air? Before June could answer, the lights flickered. Then the alarms began screaming. Jun's blood turned cold as he saw the readings. Power failure, recycler offline. They had minutes, not hours. He scooped Minyu up and ran toward the emergency station, his mind racing through options. There weren't any good ones. The backup system was already running the medical bay. If he diverted it here, people would die either way. In the main chamber, 300 people looked at him with hollow eyes. They had survived wars, plague, starvation, and the slow death of their planet, but survival was just delaying the inevitable. Everyone knew it. Earth was dying and taking humanity with it. June was about to make a decision that would kill dozens to save hundreds. When the lights changed, not flickered, changed, they turned a brilliant blue-white, brighter than anything in the shelter. People screamed. Some dropped to their knees. Jun held Minyu tight and stared at the ceiling. Something was happening on the surface. The radio exploded with chatter. Every shelter, every settlement, every underground bunker was reporting the same thing. Light from above, massive energy signatures. Something in orbit. Dad, what is it? Minyu whispered. Jun didn't answer because he didn't know. First contact had always been humanity's dream. Now, at the end of everything, maybe they were finally meeting their neighbors, or maybe something had come to finish the job the universe started. 20 minutes later, June stood in the Central Hub command center with 50 other engineers and leaders. On the screen was something impossible. A ship hung in orbit above Earth, so large it blocked out a quarter of the sky. It was beautiful in a way That hurt to look at crystalline structures that caught light and bent it into colors humans had no names for. Hana stood at the front of the room. She had been an astronaut once before. There were rockets to fly. Now she led what remained of humanity's government. Her hair was white, her face lined with scars from radiation burns, but her eyes were sharp. They're broadcasting message, she said, in every human language, every frequency, every possible method of communication. The speakers came alive with a voice like wind chimes. People of Earth, we are the Valoran communion. We have witnessed your struggle. We have heard your calls into the void. We come to offer assistance. The room erupted. Some people cried. Others argued it was a trick. Jun just held Minyu and tried to understand what he was hearing. The Valorans sent down shuttles that moved like liquid light. They were tall, these aliens nearly 3 m high, with skin that looked like living crystal that shifted through blues and purples. They moved with grace that seemed wrong for something so large. Their leader called himself Thalen. He stood in the ruins of what used to be New York and looked at the handful of human representatives with eyes that held genuine sadness. Your world is dying, Thalen said through a translator device, but you do not have to die with it. We can help if you will accept. Hana stepped forward. She looked so small next to the alien, so fragile. Why, she asked, why would you help us? What do you want? Thalen tilted his head in a gesture that might have been a smile. We want nothing. We help because all life is precious, because when we were young others helped us, because it is right. Some of the humans didn't believe him. They argued about traps and invasions and hidden motives. But June looked at the alien's eyes and saw something he recognized: compassion. Real compassion. The Valorans went to work. They brought atmospheric processors that began scrubbing the poisoned air. They brought medical technology that could repair radiation damage at the cellular level. They brought food synthesizers that could turn dirt into nutrition. They brought genetic repair technology to fix what the radiation had broken in humanity's DNA. Most importantly, they brought hope. June worked alongside a Valoran engineer named Sir, learning technology that seemed like magic. Together they brought Shelter 47 systems back online, then improved them beyond anything humans had managed before. Minyu played with Valoran children who sang in frequencies that made the air shimmer. 3 months after the Valorans arrived, Jun stood on Earth's surface for the first time in 15 years. The sky was still gray, but it was clearing. He could almost see stars. Minyu held his hand and pointed upward. Dad, are we going to live? This time Jun and LT, Unk and GT. Smile was real. Yes, little one, we're going to live. Behind them, Hana watched the sunset with Thalen. We will never forget this, she said quietly. Never. Humanity owes you everything. Thalen's crystalline face caught the fading light. You owe us nothing, just live, thrive. That is payment enough. But Hana shook her head. No, humans remember their debts always. She didn't know how true those words would become. None of them did. They couldn't imagine that this moment of salvation would echo across centuries, that this debt would be repaid in ways that would shake the galaxy itself. For now they simply stood together under a healing sky, two species united by the simple act of helping another in need. The Valorans had saved humanity once, and humanity would never ever forget the Valorans. Stayed for 10 years, they taught humans how to use their technology, how to repair it, how to improve it. They helped Earth's population grow from 400 million to nearly a billion. They watched humanity's children learn to laugh again. Then, as quietly as they had arrived, they prepared to leave. Hana was old. Now her body held together by Valoran medical technology that had added decades to her life. She stood at the spaceport with Thalen, watching his people board their great crystalline ship. "Stay," she said, "we have so much more to learn from you." Thalen's face shifted through colors that meant sadness in his people's language. "We must go. There are others who need help. Other species calling out to the void. And you must find your own path now. We have given you tools, but humanity must decide what to build with them. Will we see you again? Perhaps. The galaxy is vast, but paths often cross in unexpected ways." Thalen placed a three-fingered hand on Hana's shoulder. "Be well, Hana of Earth. Be strong, but most of all be kind." The Valoran ship rose into the sky and vanished in a flash of light. Humanity was alone again, but not helpless, not anymore. Hana's granddaughter Sora was 16 when the Valorans left. She had grown up, learning from them, her mind soaking up knowledge like a sponge. Where others saw gift, Sora saw puzzles to solve. She took apart every piece of Valoran technology she could find, learned how it worked, then made it better. By the time she was 30, Sora had revolutionized human space flight. The Valorans had given humanity basic jump drives that could cross a few light years. Sora's team improved them to cross dozens. Valorans had given them energy shields. Sora made them stronger and more efficient. The Valorans had given them tools for peace. Sora, unfortunately, found herself making tools for war, because humanity was not alone in the galaxy, and not everyone was friendly. The Reich Empire found humanity's first colony world in 2298. They didn't send diplomats. They sent warships. The colony, named Hope's End, had 50,000 people. The Rithik killed 43,000 in the first attack. By the time human ships arrived, the colony was ash. Sora watched the reports with her partner Kaiu Yuang, a military strategist who had been preparing for this moment since he was old enough to understand what the Valorans had really saved humanity from, not just death but helplessness. The galaxy was dangerous and humanity had been weak. "Never again can we fight them?" Sora asked. Kong studied the tactical data, his face grim. "Yes, our ships are faster and our shields are better, but they have more experience, more ships, and they're not afraid of casualties. Then we teach them to be afraid." The war with the Rithik lasted 3 years. It was brutal. Humanity lost 2 more colonies and nearly 1 million people, but the Rithik lost their entire forward fleet and their will to fight. Humans learned quickly, adapted faster, and fought with a desperation born from remembering extinction. Kiang and LT Unk and GTS tactics became legendary. He combined Valoran technology with human unpredictability. He used jump drives to appear where enemies didn't expect, used shields in ways the Valorans never imagined, and fought with a calculated ruthlessness that shocked the galaxy. The Wick Empire sued for peace. Other species took notice. Humanity was new, but they were not weak. They were not prey. Dejo rose to power in the aftermath. He was a politician who understood what people wanted to hear. Never again, he said in speeches that filled stadiums. Never again will humanity beg for survival. Never again will we depend on the charity of others. We were saved once. Because we were weak, we will never be weak again. The crowds roared approval. Earth's population hit 2 billion. Colonies spread across 12 star systems. Shipyards churned out vessels that combined valor and elegance with human aggression. Humanity was growing, and they were growing strong. Hana watched from her sick bed as the world changed around her. She was 130 years old, her body finally failing despite the best medicine humanity could create. Sora sat beside her, holding her hand. Did we learn the right lessons? Hana asked. Quietly, Sora didn't answer immediately. She thought about the weapons she had built, the wars she had helped win, the power humanity now wielded. We learned to survive. Isn't that what matters? The Valorant saved us because they believed all life was precious. They wanted nothing in return. They were strong but kind. Hana coughed, her breath rattling. I hope we remember that. I hope we remember to be better. We remember. Grandmother will never forget what they did for us. Hana died 3 months later at the age of 142. Her funeral was attended by 3 billion people across human space. Her final words were recorded and played at memorials across every human world. Remember who saved us. Remember to be better. People heard those words differently than Hana meant them to many. They meant remember how weak we were. Remember to be strong. The nuance was lost in translation across time and trauma. By 2350, humanity controlled 30 star systems. They encountered the Vacrine Collective and fought a short, decisive war. When the Vacrine tried to claim human territory, they met the Silran Republic and forged an alliance based on mutual respect and shared enemies. They discovered a dozen primitive species and helped them, always remembering the debt they owed, always paying it forward. But they also built the largest military fleet in their region of space. They fortified their worlds with weapons that made even old enemies nervous. They trained every human in basic combat because they remembered what happened when you were helpless. Kaio Yuang, now an admiral, stood on the bridge of humanity's first dreadnought. It was 10 times larger than anything the Valorans had brought, bristling with weapons and shield generators that could withstand a star's fury. He named it Remembrance for what we were, he said at the launch ceremony, and what will never be again. Oh, oh. Oh, oh. Sora stood beside him, elderly now but still sharp. She had watched her life's work transform humanity from survivors to conquerors. No, not conquerors, defenders. That's what they told themselves. We only fight to protect what's ours. We only build weapons to ensure no one can hurt us. But wasn't that what every powerful species said? She thought about Thalen, sometimes wondered where the Valorans had gone, if they had saved other dying species. She hoped they had. She hoped those species had learned better lessons than humanity had. Do you think they'd be proud of us? Sora asked. Kaio Yuang quietly, staring at the massive warship. Kaio Yuang considered the question carefully. I think they'd understand. They saved us because they valued life. Everything we've built is to protect life, human life, and the lives of those who stand with us. That's not wrong, no. Sora agreed, but I wonder if it's enough. The years rolled on. Humanity reached 50 billion people spread across 200 worlds, they won wars, forged alliances, and carved out a piece of the galaxy they could call their own. They never forgot the Valorans, but memory changed with time. The aliens who saved them became legends, stories parents told children, symbols of humanity's darkest hour and greatest salvation. The message became simple: we were once so weak that we needed rescuing. We must never be that weak again. It was a good message for survival, but Hana had wanted them to learn something else, something about kindness and selflessness and helping others when it cost you everything. That message got quieter with each generation, drowned out by the necessity of strength in a dangerous galaxy. No one realized that humanity's greatest test wasn't surviving or becoming strong, it was remembering what the Valorans had really taught them, not how to build shields and ships, but how to help someone who had nothing to offer in return. That test was coming, and it would show the galaxy what humanity had truly learned. The Terran ascendancy controlled 200 star systems and fielded the third largest military fleet in the known galaxy. They had gone from dying refugees to a major power in less than 3 centuries. Other species watched humanity's rise with a mixture of respect and concern. Admiral Jiwen commanded the Third Fleet from her flagship Indomitable. She was 50 years old and had never known a world before humanity was strong. Her grandmother had told her stories about the Valorans, about the dying Earth, about the desperation. But those were just stories. Jiwen's reality was fleet formations, tactical displays, and the constant calculation of threat levels. Admiral, we have incoming signals from the HK Dominion. Her communications officer reported. They're demanding we withdraw from the outer reach sectors. Jiwen studied the star map. The H Dominion was older than humanity's entire civilization many times over. They had ruled a quarter of the galaxy for millennia through fear and overwhelming force. They were slavers, conquerors, and bullies, and they were used to getting their way. Send our response, Jiwen said calmly. The outer reach sectors contain 17 inhabited worlds that have requested Terran protection. We will not abandon them to Hask tyranny. If the Dominion wishes to contest this, they know where to find us. Her tactical officer looked nervous. Admiral, the H have 5 times our fleet strength in this region. They also have a 1,000-year history of fighting enemies who surrender after the first battle. We don't surrender. Jiwen smiled tightly. Send the message. On the other side of human space, Bora worked in a very different kind of war room. She was humanity's chief diplomat, and her weapon was words instead of warships. She sat across from representatives of a dozen species, trying to forge something unprecedented. A real alliance of equals. The H Dominion threatens all of us, Bora said, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had argued this point for months sparingly. We're vulnerable. Together we can stand against them. A Silron representative, his scales flashing colors of skepticism, spoke. Humans speak of unity, but you have grown powerful very quickly. How do we know you won't become the next Hask? Bora met his eyes steadily. Because we remember what it's like to be powerless. We remember being saved when we had nothing to offer in return. That memory shapes everything we do. Cropler. Pretty words, a Granthi delegate rumbled, but words are cheap. President. Screeded, then judge us by our actions. Bora replied, we have defended 7 species from aggression in the last decade. We have shared our technology with 12 others. We have never claimed territory that wasn't freely given or legitimately settled. We keep our word. Always. That last part was true, and everyone knew it. Humanity's word was becoming worth something in galactic politics. If humans made a promise, they kept it. If they made a threat, they carried it out. It made them predictable. In a galaxy full of liars and backstabbers, the serious accords were signed 3 months later. 15 species, including humanity, pledged mutual defense and cooperation. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Tammin worked in the shadows while diplomats talked and admirals postured. He was an intelligence officer, and his job was to find threats before they became crisis. He had been tracking the H-Dominion for years, and what he found made his blood run cold. The H weren't just conquerors. They had a long-term plan for the galaxy. They identified promising young species, waited for them to develop useful technology, then crushed them and took everything. It was efficient evil, and it had worked for thousands of years. Humanity was on their list, so were most of the species. In the serious accords, they're going to hit us soon, Tammin briefed the Terran Council. Within a year, maybe less. They see the alliance as a threat and want to break it before it becomes strong. Let them come, one council member said confidently. We've beaten everyone who challenged us. We've never fought the H. Tame countered. They've been doing this since before humans had fire. They're good at war. Jiwen was called to the emergency session. She listened to Tammin's briefing, studied the intelligence, and ran simulations in her head. The numbers weren't good. Humanity could hurt the Hask, maybe even fight them to a standstill, but winning that would take something special. We need to hit them first, she said finally. Hard, fast, and in a way they don't expect. We need to show them that we're not another species they can bully. The council debated for 3 days. Some argued for a defensive strategy. Others wanted to seek peace, but Bora surprisingly sided with Jiwen. The H respect only strength, Bora said. If we look weak, every enemy we have will test us. If we show strength, some of them might think twice. The Terran ascendancy struck. First, Jiwen led a coordinated assault on 3 H military installations. Simultaneously, human ships jumped in, launched massive strikes, and jumped out before the Hask could respond. It was brazen, aggressive, and exactly what no one expected from humanity. The Hask Dominion was furious. They assembled a massive war fleet and invaded human space with overwhelming force. The war everyone feared had begun. It lasted 2 years and cost millions of lives on both sides, but humanity had advantages the H didn't expect. They were creative tacticians who didn't follow traditional rules of engagement. They had allies who actually trusted them and fought beside them willingly. And they had a ferocity born from remembering extinction. Jiwen's fleet fought in 17 major battles. She won 12, lost 3, and fought 2 draws in the others. Each battle taught her something about the H. They were powerful but predictable. They relied on proven tactics and overwhelming force. They expected enemies to break after losing. Humans didn't break. They got angry. Yunji, a cultural anthropologist, made the discovery that changed Everything she was studying captured H. Data corridors when she found references. To the Valorans, her hands shook as she read the Valorans had saved 43 species. Over the last 3 millennia, 43 different civilizations at their moment of greatest need, they had asked for nothing, given everything, and moved on. Of those 43 species, 32 were now extinct, 6 were primitive societies, barely clinging to survival, 4 had achieved modest success but remained minor powers, only 1 had become a major force in the galaxy. Only 1 had taken the gift of survival and built something truly powerful. Humanity. Unjai brought her findings to the council. We're not special because the Valorant saved us, she said. We're special because of what we did. Afterward, most species they saved either fell back into decline or never developed real strength. We survived and thrived. Why? Someone asked. Because we remembered, Unjai said simply. We remembered being helpless. We remembered the terror of extinction. We remembered someone helping us when we couldn't help ourselves. That memory drove us to become something more. Bora was the one who asked the question that haunted them all. Where are the Valorans now? They saved us 270 years ago. Has anyone seen them since? Tammin pulled up his intelligence files. No confirmed sightings in any database I can access. It's like they vanished in, or they're in trouble, Jai said quietly. Species don't just disappear. I'm not. They wouldn't ask for help, Bora said. They're too proud, too dedicated to their mission of helping others. Then we need to find them, Yunji said. We owe them everything, but finding someone a galaxy of trillions was impossible, especially during a war. The search was noted, filed, and set aside as humanity focused on survival. The war with the Hask ended when Juan's fleet destroyed their primary shipyard in a daring raid. That cost her half her ships but crippled the Dominion's ability to replace losses. The Hask sued for peace, and the Sirius Accords suddenly became the most powerful alliance in the region. Humanity had proven itself. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were protectors, warriors, allies worth having. Other species looked at them with new respect, but Jiyuan looked at the casualty lists and wondered if they had learned the right lessons. The Valorans had been strong enough to save others without asking anything in return. Humanity was strong enough to win wars. Were those the same kind of strength? She didn't have an answer. None of them did. And then 3 years after the war ended, a message arrived that would test everything humanity had become. A message from a dying species with crystalline skin and voices like wind chimes. The Valorans were calling for help. The message came on every frequency, in every human language, exactly as it had 274 years ago. But this time the Valorans were not offering help. They were asking for it. People of Earth, the voice said, and every human who heard it felt something stir in their collective memory. We are the Valoran communion. Our sun dies. Our world ends in 6 of your months. We have no weapons to defend ourselves, no ships fast enough to evacuate our people. We ask for your help, though we have no right to ask. We are 8 billion souls with nowhere to go. The transmission ended. Humanity was silent for exactly 12 seconds. Then the entire Terran ascendancy exploded into argument. Siajan, the Terran president, called an emergency council session. Every major leader Human space appeared on screens around the chamber. The debate started before Siajan could even call for order. We have to help them, someone said. Immediately, help them with what? Another voice countered, 8 billion. Refugees, do you understand the logistics, the cost, the resources they saved us when we were dying? We owe them. That was almost 3 centuries ago. None of us were alive. Then why should we pay for a debt we didn't incur? None. Siajan raised his hand for silence. It took several minutes. Ji-Yuan, what's your military assessment? The old admiral appeared on the main screen. She looked tired. She had fought too many battles, lost too many friends. Evacuating 8 billion people in 6 months would require 60% of our available transport ships and 30% of our military fleet as escort. It's the largest logistics operation in galactic history. An admiral our enemies are watching. The Rithik have been rebuilding. The H are bitter about their defeat. If they see us commit that many resources to rescue operation, they might strike. So you're saying we can't do it? Siajan asked. I'm saying it will cost us ships, lives, security. The question is whether we're willing to pay that price. Ji-Yuan paused. But I'll also say this. My grandmother told me stories about the Valorans, how they saved Earth when we had nothing to offer, how they asked for nothing in return, how they believed all life was precious if we turn our backs on them. Now we're saying those values meant nothing. We're saying we only care about debts when it's convenient. The debate raged for 3 days. The council was split almost evenly. Those against helping made practical arguments. Humanity had its own problems, its own people to protect. The Valorans were strangers from centuries ago. No one could expect such a massive sacrifice. Those in favor made emotional arguments. They talked about honor and debt and being better than their enemies. But the practical voices were louder. Mina was a young historian, barely 30 years old, and she had studied the Valoran rescue her entire career. She watched the debate with growing horror. They were going to vote no. They were going to abandon the species that saved them. She couldn't let that happen. Mina published her research on every human network. Simultaneously, she showed the recordings of Earth's final days, the dying children, the broken machinery, the extinction creeping closer. She showed the Valorans arriving with no promise of reward, no expectation of repayment, just the simple belief that helping was right. She ended with Hana's final words. Remember who saved us. Remember to be better. Better than what? Mina asked in her broadcast. Better than we were when we were weak and dying. Better than the species who prey on others. Better than those who only help when it profits them. The Valorans showed us what strength with compassion looks like. Now they need us. This is our chance to prove we learned the right lessons. This is our chance to show the galaxy what humanity really means. The broadcast went viral. Within hours, billions of humans were talking about it. Protests erupted, not angry protests, but something quieter and more powerful. People simply showed up at government buildings, spaceports, and military bases. They didn't shout or make demands. They just stood there with signs that said, remember and we owe them and be better. Jun was 90 years old and had lived long enough to see his son become a ship captain. He watched Mina's broadcast from his home on Mars and cried for the first time in decades. He remembered the Valorans, remembered Phelan's kindness, remembered the moment. He realized his son would live to see adulthood. He recorded his own message and sent it to the council. I was there. I watched my child prepare to die. I watched humanity's last breath. The Valorant saved us for no reason, except it was right. If we can't do the same, then maybe we don't deserve what they gave us. Thousands of survivors sent similar messages. They were old now, the last generation, who remembered Earth's darkest hour, but their voices carried weight. The council reconvened. Siajan looked exhausted. We need a decision. The Valorans are waiting. Jiyun spoke first. I've been an admiral for 20 years. I've made hard decisions. I've sent people to die for good reasons. But I've never had to decide if we're the kind of species who abandons those who saved us. I vote yes. We help them whatever it costs. Bora nodded diplomatically. This defines us. If we help, we become the species who keeps its debts, no matter the cost. If we don't, we become the species who only helps when it's convenient. I vote yes. One by one, the votes came in. It was close, terrifyingly close, but when the count finished, the decision was made. Humanity would evacuate the Valorans. Phelan received the message on Ilunara, the Valoran home world. He was ancient, now over 600 years old, and he had watched his son slowly dying. He had sent the distress call with no real hope. The humans he remembered were desperate survivors. How could they help? They said yes. His aide told him, the humans are coming. They're sending a fleet. Phelan's crystalline body flickered with emotions too complex to name. Relief, gratitude, disbelief. How many ships? They're sending everything they can. Spare, Commander. Every transport, every warship they can commit without leaving their territory completely undefended. They say they'll evacuate all 8 billion of us. Why? Balin whispered. We saved them so long ago, they owe us nothing. But his aide pulled up the human broadcasts, showed him Mina's research and Jun's message and the millions of voices saying the same thing. They say they remember. They say they owe you everything. Yuna was Jiyun's protege and the fleet commander selected to lead the evacuation. She was brilliant, aggressive, and absolutely convinced this was a suicide mission, but she was also human, and humans kept their debts. She studied the logistics and wanted to cry. 8 billion people, 6 months, half the galaxy away, and every enemy. Humanity would see this as an opportunity. We're going to lose a lot of ships, she told her staff. But I can promise that if we do this, the galaxy will remember what humanity stands for. Her fleet assembled 3,000 transport ships, 800 warships, and supply vessels beyond counting. It was the largest single fleet in human history, and it was barely enough. As Yuna's flagship jumped toward Valoran space, Taman's intelligence reports started coming in. The Rithik were mobilizing. The Hask were moving fleets into position. 2 other hostile powers were preparing strikes. They all saw the same thing. Humanity was vulnerable. It was time to test them. Siajan read the reports and felt the weight of the decision crushing him. They were about to be attacked on multiple fronts because they chose to help the Valorans. He had sent humanity's defense fleet away to save 8 billion aliens from a species most humans had never even met. It was possibly the worst strategic decision in human history, or it was the Most important one, scramble our reserves, he ordered. Get every ship we have left into defensive positions and send a message to our allies. Tell them we're about to be tested. Tell them we need help. The responses came quickly. The Silthrans pledged their fleet. The Grand mobilized. Every species in the Shreyas Accords remembered how humanity had fought for them against the H. Now it was their turn to stand with humanity. As war fleets moved across the galaxy and evacuation ships raced toward a dying sun, an old human in a modest home on Mars watched the news and smiled through his tears. We're going to do it. Mean you? John whispered to his sons. Picture we're going to save them, just like they saved us. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant when humanity repaid a debt. The evacuation of Illuminara began under an orange sky. The Valoran sun was dying, expanding slowly, cooking the planet that had been home to their species for millions of years. Yuna's fleet arrived and immediately began the largest rescue operation. Galactic history, 8 billion lives, 6 months. It should have been impossible. The transports descended in waves. Thousands at a time, Valorants filed aboard with quiet dignity, carrying what little they could save from their world. Children clutched toys, elders carried data cores of their history. Everyone looked back at the world they would never see again. Phelan stood with Yuna on the flagship's bridge, watching the operation. You came, he said, his voice filled with wonder. After so long. You remembered. We never forgot, Yuna replied. Every human child learns about the day the Valorant saved Earth. You're part of our history, part of who we are. How could we not come? This will cost you so much. Yes, it will. Yuna studied the tactical displays, showing enemy fleets moving into position, but some debts are worth paying. The first attack came 3 weeks into the evacuation. The Reich Empire, still bitter from their defeat decades earlier, struck at 3 human colonies simultaneously. They expected humanity to abandon the Valorans and rush to defend their own territory. Instead, Juan's defense fleets engaged with desperate fury. They were outnumbered 2 to 1, but fought like demons. Human ships used every trick, every tactic, every ounce of creativity their captains possessed. They held the line barely. Adam, we've lost Jang and Victory's Edge, the tactical officer reported. 3,400 casualties. The Rithik are regrouping for another strike. Juan studied the displays. Her fleet was bleeding, but Yuna's evacuation transports were still loading. Valorant still vulnerable. If she pulled back, if she abandoned the rescue, her people would be safe. She thought about Hana's final words, about Phelan's kindness, about what humanity had promised to be. All ships maintain position, she ordered. We hold until every Valorant is safe. We hold until the last transport is loaded. We don't abandon people ever. The H Dominion attacked from another direction. The Grande Consortium, smelling weakness, struck a third front. Within 2 months, humanity was fighting a war on 5 fronts while simultaneously evacuating 8 billion refugees. The galaxy watched. Some species placed bets on how quickly humanity would break, others quietly admired the audacity and the stupidity. In equal measure, Menio was a young soldier, barely 22, stationed at the Reach Junction. It was a critical waypoint where evacuation convoys had to pass on their way back to Terran space. His fleet was small, just 30 warships against a Hask. Force 10 times larger, they're coming. His captain said, we hold for 6 hours. Until the convoys jump out, then we retreat, revere, we have convoys, we have guns to friends, 6 hours, Menno checked his suit seals and said a prayer he didn't really believe in. The battle was hell, they hammered them with overwhelming firepower. Human ships exploded like stars. Mo and LT Unk and GT's fighter squadron lasted 40 minutes before he was the only one left. His ship was barely holding together, trailing atmosphere and burning in 3 places. All fighters retreat. The order came, you're released to withdraw. Mia looked at his scanner. The convoy was still loading, 300 transport ships each, carrying thousands of Valorants. If the H got through, all those people would die. He thought about why he had joined the military, about his grandfathers, stories of the Valorants, about what humanity was supposed to stand for. Negative, he said, still in the fight. He wasn't alone. Across every battlefield, human soldiers made the same choice. They died by the hundreds, by the thousands, but they held the line. Every transport that made it through carried Valor and civilians who would live because humans decided that some debts were worth dying for. HJU was a logistics coordinator, and her job was impossible. She had to manage the movement of 3,000 transport ships, coordinate supplies for the evacuation, and keep track of 8 billion individual Valorans across 100 loading sites. She worked 20-hour days. She lived on stimulants and determination. Her team performed miracles of organization and coordination. When a transport broke down, she rerouted 3 others. When supplies ran short, she found more. When loading sites came under attack, she adapted the schedule in real time. How are you doing this? Valoran aide asked her in amazement. Complexity is beyond any system we have. And it ended with Hardy Mall 8, who smiled tiredly. We learned from you. Valorant saved 400 million humans in chaos and disaster. You showed us it could be done. We're in LT Unk and GT just following your example. 4 months into the evacuation, half the Valorant population was safe, but humanity had lost 45,000 ships and 2 million people. The war was grinding them down. Some voices back home called for retreat, for accepting losses and ending the bleeding. Jiwan, nursing burns from a battle that nearly killed her, addressed the Terran Council. From her hospital bed, we're losing ships, we're losing people, we're losing territory we fought years to secure, but we're winning something more important. We're proving that humanity keeps its word, that we value life above territory, that we will sacrifice everything to protect those who cannot protect themselves. She paused, coughing blood into a cloth. The Valorans asked for nothing when they saved us. We ask for nothing now. This is who we choose to be. The council voted to continue. The war went on. Thalen watched from Yuna's flagship as human ships died, defending Valorant transports. He saw soldiers holding impossible positions. He saw captains staying with crippled ships to buy time for evacuations. He saw humanity bleeding for his people. Why? He asked Yuna one night as they watched another memorial service on the main screen. We saved you once centuries ago. This exceeds any possible debt. Yuna was quiet for a long moment. You gave us life when we had nothing to offer in return. You showed Us what real strength looks like, not the power to destroy, but the courage to help when it costs everything. We're not repaying a debt, we're proving we understood the lesson. So many of your people are dying. Yes, but they're dying for something that matters. Una turned to look at him. The Valorans taught humanity that all life is precious, that you help because it's right, not because it's profitable. If we abandoned you now, we'd be saying those values were just pretty words. We'd be saying we only care about others. When it's convenient, you're sacrificing yourselves for us. You sacrificed for us. We're just returning the favor. The 6th month arrived. The Valoran sun had expanded to consume the inner planets. Illuminara had days left. The final transports loaded the last evacuees, while human warships fought a desperate rearguard action against 3 attacking fleets. Juan's battered forces held the evacuation route. Mincio, somehow still alive, flew his 20th mission with a ship held together by luck and determination. HJU coordinated the final loading sequences. While running on adrenaline and willpower, the last transport lifted off, carrying Thalen himself. He watched his world from the viewport as the ship accelerated toward the jump point. The sun that had warmed his people for millions of years was a bloated orange monster now, reaching out to consume everything they had ever built. Goodbye, he whispered. Thank you for everything you gave us. The fleet jumped to safety. 24 hours later, Illuminara's sun went supernova in a spectacular explosion. Visible across half the galaxy, 8 billion Valorans watched from human ships safe in the darkness of space. Every single one of them had been saved. The cost was staggering. 45,000 human ships destroyed, 2 million human casualties, 3 colony worlds temporarily occupied by enemies, territory lost, resources depleted. Terran ascendancy would take a decade to fully recover, but they had saved the Valorans, all of them, every single life. The galaxy was silent for a long moment, trying to process what it had witnessed. Humanity had been attacked on multiple fronts, had suffered devastating losses, had every reason to cut their losses and retreat. Instead, they had held, they had bled, they had died by the thousands to save a species that had saved them nearly 3 centuries earlier. It was unthinkable. It was irrational. It was completely, utterly human. The Rithic Empire sued for peace, suddenly unwilling to fight an enemy that crazy. The H-Dominion withdrew, shaken by the realization that humanity didn't calculate costs like normal species. Other hostile powers reconsidered their strategies because the galaxy had learned something terrifying and wonderful. Humanity remembered their debts and they paid them regardless of cost. If you helped humanity, they would move planets to help you back. If you attacked them, they would fight with the fury of people who remembered extinction and refused to go quietly. But most importantly, if you needed help and they could give it, they would, even if it cost them everything. The Valorans settled on a world humanity terraformed for them. They named it New Illumara. They built cities and started growing again, and they lived alongside humans, 2 species bound together by mutual salvation across the centuries. Thalen, now the oldest living, gave a speech at the dedication of the memorial to the fallen, a monument listing every human who died during the evacuation. We saved humanity once, he said, his voice carrying across thousands of attendees. Human and Valoran alike, we thought that was our gift to the galaxy, but humanity's gift is greater, they showed. Us showed everyone that strength and compassion are not opposites, that you can be powerful and kind, that some debts transcend calculation. He paused, his crystalline form catching the light. They call it the unthinkable repayment. That humanity would risk everything for an old debt, but I think they misunderstand. Humanity didn't do this because they owed us, they did it because they chose to be better. They chose to be the kind of species that helps even when it hurts, even when it costs everything. Mina, now recognized as humanity's greatest living historian, wrote the final entry in her chronicle of the evacuation. The Valorans saved us because they believed all life was precious. They expected nothing in return. We saved them for the same reason, not because we owed them, though we did, not because it was strategically wise, because it wasn't. We saved them because they showed us when we were at our lowest what it meant to be strong and good at the same time. They taught us that the greatest strength is helping someone who has nothing to offer you. We finally understood the lesson, and in understanding it, we became something more than survivors. We became the species that helps no matter the cost. We became human in the truest sense of the word. Jun died peacefully at 93 years old, surrounded by his grandchildren. His last words were simple: we did it. We saved them. We're even now, but humanity knew better. They would never be even, because the debt wasn't about numbers or time. It was about values, about the choice to be better, about proving that compassion and strength could coexist. The Valorans had given humanity that gift when they were dying, and humanity in return had shown the galaxy what happened when you taught humans about kindness and then gave them the power to act on it. They didn't just repay their debt. They became living proof that some species, when given a chance, choose to be extraordinary, and the galaxy would never forget.